everyone, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well. Today's video is going to be a review, swatches, and comparison on these two palettes. This is the Natasha Denona Sunset Palette, and this is the brand new Colourpop Yes Please palette. These have been getting a lot of hype recently, especially this Colourpop one, because it looks so dang similar to the Natasha Denona palette. So I thought I would do a dupe or dud on the Colourpop palette versus the Natasha Sunset palette. I was also going to include the Gimme More highlighter palette in comparison to the Nicole Guerrero and Anastasia collaboration, but I don't want this video to be super long, so this will be its own video, which you will see in a couple days. I will post it down below once it is up, but I thought I would upload the eyeshadow part of this first, just because I know this is getting a lot more hype than the highlighter palette. This palette is currently out of stock right now, along with the highlighter palette, but it will be back in stock on July 7th at 10 a.m. when it goes live with the Crushed Crystals collection, as well as all of their new nail polishes. So I will leave the link for this down below. Make sure you guys set an alarm because this is gonna sell out so fast, just like it did last time. But if you are curious to see my thoughts on these two palettes and if they're a dupe or not, then just keep on watching. So jumping right into this, I do want to start out by talking about the Natasha Denona palette. This palette did come out a couple of months ago, and I have really been loving it. Natasha Denona is known for having very pricey eyeshadow palettes, but when you actually do the cost breakdown of each of the eyeshadows in this palette, they are around $8 a piece, which aren't that expensive if you were to buy them individually. They kind of fall in between Makeup Geek and Anastasia along the spectrum of prices. Another plus is that you do get a crap ton of product in each of these pans, so you are paying for one, a lot of product, and two, an amazing formula when it comes to this eyeshadow palette. I actually got my hands on this the day that it came out. Warm tones are so in right now, and I know a lot of other companies are coming out with a really warm tone palette with all these burnt reds and oranges and this beautiful yellow mustardy color. It's so pretty. A lot of these colors in this palette are actually very unique to my collection, which is why I wanted to purchase it in the first place. This palette is $129, which is so much money for an eyeshadow palette. So I was really excited to see that Colourpop came out with something very similar. And right when I saw a picture of this palette, I immediately thought of the Sunset palette because they look so stinking similar. So I thought I would do a video on these because, again, this is really expensive and this is only $16. So I'm going to show you all the Natasha Denona one first. This is what it looks like. It is a beautiful packaging. It says Natasha Denona and it also says Sunset Palette. It is like this interesting kind of leathered packaging. The back doesn't have anything except for all the information about the eyeshadow palette on the bottom, and then when you open it up, you do have a mirror as well as this little insert that is actually attached to the eyeshadow palette. You could rip it out, but I do like having all the names on there. And then you have the gorgeous palette. You do get 15 eyeshadows in here versus the Colourpop, which you do get 12. And like I was saying, these are huge pans. Each one of these you are getting 0.08 ounces or 2.5 grams of product, but the colors are what really sold me in this palette. And of course, I love the formula of Natasha Denona shadows. They are super buttery and creamy, and a lot of them match just kind of blend so well into each other. The glittery shades, these ones that are super metallic looking, I would definitely recommend using them with a glitter glue as well as a flat synthetic brush to really pack it on, because you will get fallout. They're just so chunky and they do have chunks of glitter in them, so they will be a little bit messier, but I do love the finish that it gives to the eye. And then in terms of the Colourpop one, this is what the packaging looks like. It does come with a sleeve. It is called the Yes Please palette, and then on the back you have all the names of the shadows. This is a 12 shadow palette with 2 shadows that are already existing in the Colourpop lineup that are in individual pans. So all the other 10 shades are brand new to the palette, which is exciting. So here's what the outside of the actual palette looks like. It says Cute AF. This is cardboard packaging, and then on the back you do have all of the names on here again with all the information about the palette. It does not have a mirror, and then this is what all of these shades look like. You can probably tell very similar to the Natasha one. These are a little bit smaller than the Colourpop individual shadows. These are each 0.03 ounces or 0.85 grams, which again I think is a great amount of product, but I will show you guys up close next to a single Colourpop shadow. So this is the size difference. Again, you can see that this is smaller, but it's not as small as I was expecting. The actual size of the palette is a really nice compact size, perfect for traveling, which I really appreciate. I am wearing both palettes on either eye, so one eye is Natasha Denona and one eye is Colourpop. I mean, you can really not tell. Everyone in my family was like, I seriously cannot tell. They look exactly the same. So I want to get into swatches just to show you all the similarities of these shadows. I'm not going to be doing brush swatches just because the formulas are different on these, and and I will tell you all one by one as we go through each of the colors, but I really just wanted to show you swatches in terms of the colors because I think that's what we're all here for. So I'm just going to go off of the Natasha Denona palette and kind of go in order of these rows and show you the similar shades that are in the Colourpop one. Again, this one is $129 and this one is only $16. I also just wanted to show you the comparison in size of these two palettes. They are quite different, but again, the price difference and you guys will see the similarities are insane. So the first shade that we're going to compare is this one. This one is called Atmosphere. It is a rose bronze with a metallic finish. And then in the Colourpop palette, the closest one is called Bling. This one is a metallic rust shade. So here are the two shadows. This one is Colourpop and this one is Natasha Denona. This top one is the Colourpop and the bottom is Natasha Denona. I actually really enjoy the Colourpop one more. It's a little bit more pigmented. It also has a little bit more of a red undertone to it. It has a little bit more color in my opinion than this one. The next color we have is called Sanai. This is described as a burnt terracotta with a creamy matte finish. And then the closest one in the Colourpop palette is this one. It's called Giano or Girls Night Out. It is described as a matte burnt orange shade. This one is Colourpop. This one is Natasha Denona. And then here are the swatch comparisons. This one has a little bit more of an orange undertone to it. This one is a little bit more of a brown undertone, but they are both very, very similar. This one, although it is a matte finish, I do think it has a little bit more of a satin finish in my opinion. This one is just a little bit brighter and this one is a little bit more rusty colored. This next shade in the Sunset palette, this one is called Ice Gold. It's described as a sheer golden cream with a chroma crystal finish. This one does not have a dupe, so I'm gonna skip that one. Next we have Mandarin, which is gorgeous. It looks like this, and this one is described as a golden mandarin with a duochrome finish. The dupe shade in the Colourpop palette is this one. This one is called Chauffeur. It's described as a metallic duochrome bright orange with a gold flip. Here are the two shades swatched. This one is Colourpop and my middle finger is Natasha Denona. I actually think this color is a really standout shade to me. I don't have anything like this in my collection. They are so beautiful. So there are the two swatched. Again, this top one is Colourpop, the bottom one is Natasha. This one shines a little bit more in my opinion than the Colourpop one. As you can see, they're both shimmery, but this one just has a little bit more of a pop to it. You guys will see that also in the other kind of shimmery finishes from Natasha. This next shadow is called Bronzage. This is described as a light copper with a chromal crystal finish. This one does not have a dupe for it, but it is absolutely gorgeous. I will show you guys swatches of the ones that don't have dupes later, but we're just gonna move on. This one on the next row, this one is called Volcano, spelled with a U. This one is described as a deep mauve brown with a creamy matte finish. The shade super comparable to that in the Colourpop palette is called French Kiss. This is described as a matte deep red brown. So here again are the two shades. This one is Colourpop, my middle finger is Natasha. And then here are those two finger swatches. I actually prefer the Colourpop one just a little bit more. It has more of a warm red terracotta undertone. This has a little bit more of a burnt brown versus the Sunset palette. It's still gorgeous. It also does have a warm undertone, just not as warm as the Colourpop one. This next color is gorgeous. It's called Ubade. I hope I'm saying that right. It's described as a warm gold with a chroma crystal finish. This one is also not in the Colourpop palette, so I'm just gonna skip it. After that, we have this beautiful warm orangey color. It is called Horizon, and this is described as a warm orange with a creamy matte finish. The closest dupe to that color in the Colourpop palette is this one right here. It is called Big Cocktails, and it's described as a matte orange shade. Here are those two swatches. As you can see, this one is not as close as the other colors. And then when you swatch them on your hand, they do get a little bit more similar. This one is a little bit brighter than the Natasha one. Again, the top one is Colourpop and the bottom one is from the Sunset palette. Next, we have one of my favorite shades in the Sunset palette. This one is called Sundays. It is this one right here, and this is described as a true gold with a chroma crystal finish. And then in the Colourpop palette, the dupe for that one is called Buttercake. It is this one right here, and this is described as a metallic pale yellow gold. Here are those two swatched. This one is Colourpop and this one is Natasha Denona. As you can see, this one on the bottom, the Natasha one, is just a little bit more blinding. You can definitely build up the Colourpop one, but this one has little chunks of shimmer in it, so to me, when you wet it or use it with a glitter glue, just makes it look little bit more foiled looking, but if you build this one up, you can definitely get the same intensity. You're just not gonna have the chunks of glitter like the Natasha Denona one in the Colourpop. This next shade in the Natasha Denona palette, this one is called Terra. This does not have a dupe for it, but the description of this one is a mahogany with a creamy matte finish. Moving on to the last row, we have this shade right here. This is called Bermuda. This is described as a pale peach nude with a creamy matte finish. The dupe for that one in the Colourpop palette is this one right here. This is called Champs, and the description on this one is a matte pale peachy nude. So here again are those two color swatch. This one is Colourpop and this one is Natasha. This one's going to be a little bit hard to see because it's so similar to each other, but this one on the top is Colourpop, the bottom one is Natasha. The Sunset palette color is a little bit more pastel-y, and this one has more orangey peach in my opinion. They're both very similar. This is one of the only transition shades that works for me in the Sunset palette, which is why I really appreciate the other transition color that Colourpop put in their palette. Next to that, we have the color Morgana, which is right here. This is described as a golden coral with a duochrome finish. And then the Colourpop dupe for that color is this one right here. This one is called Louis, and this is described as a metallic duochrome red with a gold flip. Here are those two shades swatched. My index finger is Colourpop and my middle finger is Natasha Denona. These ones are very similar as well. The Natasha Denona one has a little bit more of that duochrome effect, as you can see, and it's also a little bit deeper than the Colourpop one. This beautiful red color in the Sunset palette is called Panjin. This is described as a deep red with a creamy matte finish. The dupe for that one in the Colourpop palette is this one right here. This one is called Spoiled, and it's described as a matte brick red. Here is Colourpop and here's Natasha on my middle finger. These ones again are not as similar to each other. This top one is Colourpop, bottom is Natasha. This one has more magenta to it. It's a little bit more of a mauve-y color with the kind of purpley pink, and then this one is definitely a true matte brick red. This nice matte brown is called Igneous. This one again is not in the Colourpop palette, but this one is described as a dark brown with a creamy matte finish. Last but not least, we have one of the most unique colors in both of these palettes. This one is called Soul. It's a really pretty mustardy color. This one is described as a warm yellow with a creamy matte finish. And then last dupe for that color, this one is called Mischief. This is described as a matte warm yellow. Here are the two swatches. Again, the bottom one is Colourpop, the top one is the Natasha Denona. These ones are very, very similar. The top one is Colourpop, the bottom is Natasha. I love both of these colors equally. This one is a little bit more of a mustardy color. This one is definitely more of a true yellow, but when you blend them out on the eyes, they're so similar. So there you have all of the dupe shades of these two palettes. I'm now going to show you the colors in the Colourpop palette as well as in the Natasha Denona palette that you do not get dupes for. They're both equally gorgeous. Again, a lot of these other colors are more of those foiled shades that you want to use a glitter glue with, and the other colors in this one I think are beautiful colors that really pair well with the other shades in this palette, which is why I actually really like the Colourpop one as well. Here are the two other colors from the Colourpop palette. This first one is called Full Zip. It's described as a matte warm ivory, and this bottom one is called Note to Self. This one is described as a matte warm caramel. Here are those other 5 shades that you do not get in the Colourpop palette, but these are in the Sunset palette. So you have this really pretty white color, a bronzy color, as well as a deeper gold, and then you have some beautiful matte shades. This one is really, really pretty in the outer corner, and then you also have a really deep shade you can use as a liner. So when I like to think of a dupe, I like to think of both formula and color. So in terms of formula, these are completely different. I do think the Natasha Denona mattes do blend out really nicely, and they do have to be built up just a little bit, unlike the Colourpop ones, which are also really, really creamy and buttery and blend out really easily, but they're so much more pigmented when you first apply them with a brush than the Natasha ones. So it just depends on whether you want something that's really buildable, that builds nicely on each other, or if you want something that's pigmented right off the bat. In terms of the kind of metallic and foiled shades, I do think these ones work best with a glitter glue or a base underneath it because they're so chunky and they do have a lot of fallout. These ones are also really beautiful. They don't have as much as a wow factor on the lid, in my opinion, compared to these ones, but they can be built up where you do have a lot more of that metallic finish and you have it really foiled on your lid. So I'm wearing the Natasha one on this side and I have the Colourpop one on this side of my face, and I think that they're both so similar. If you do want to splurge and get yourself a beautiful palette with some gorgeous other colors that you cannot get in the Colourpop one, I would definitely recommend the Natasha one. I think that the colors are gorgeous. You do get a variety of different shades in here and the quality is just insane, and you get so much product for how much you're spending. I know it is pricey, but I do think it's worth the splurge. And then on the other hand, I also really do love this Colourpop palette. I've been reaching for this a lot. If you have been wanting the Sunset palette, but you just cannot justify spending this much on a palette, which I totally understand, I would definitely get yourself this palette. This is only $16. It's like over $100 less than the Natasha one, and it is so good and so similar. It has so many of those same tones. Of course, the formula of Colourpop shadows, in my opinion, are one of my favorites. They're definitely top 4 for me in my entire collection. I just absolutely adore these shadows. They work so nicely on the eye. And again, in terms of when I did my makeup today, when I did one on one eye and one on the other, they're so hard to distinguish once you use them with a brush and on the eyes, the differences between the two. So I would definitely pick this one up. I know it's gonna go very, very fast for the restock on the 7th, so I would definitely set an alarm to get this as soon as you can and as soon as it goes live, because I do think this will sell out. I just absolutely love this palette. I think it's definitely worth the money, even though they are a little bit smaller than the typical eyeshadows. I think it's so nice to try out all these colors. So I will leave links for both of these palettes down below. I know this one is still sold out. It was supposed to be limited edition, and now it's coming back to her permanent line so everyone can get their chance to get their hands on it. And this one is limited edition, unfortunately. So once this next restock, I don't know if they're restocking again, but I will again leave all the information for both of these palettes down below if you guys are interested in checking them out. So that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you all really liked it. I hope it was helpful and informative. If you do have any other suggestions or want to see any other videos on dupe products that are a little bit more pricey and you want to see dupes that are a lot more affordable, let me know down below and I'd definitely be able to do that. I love watching dupe videos. Again, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you do see the other video with the highlighter palette in comparison to the Anastasia and Nicole Guerrero palette. But if you all did like this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I love you all so very much, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!